Hi class, welcome back. So now we are going to have another new lesson for today. Actually, this is just a part 2 of the discussion of about preschool. So again, we are going to have preschool part 2. Again, I'm your professor, Mary Anastasia Angawan, and I'm your professor here in developmental psychology from Trinity University of Asia. So now we are going to talk about more about preschool. So we've already discussed the hallmarks in the first part and what are the important aspects about growth in the preschool. Now let's continue. Now let's go to the cognitive development. So again, in cognitive development, anything about the cognition of the preschooler. Alright, so in here we have the idea of less reliance on direct sensory experience. The simulation is less on sensory, but because they know how to categorize things, the activities are very varied and imaginative. So in here, the preschooler now, in cognitive aspect, if infancy, they are now they are focusing on what they see and what they actually do. In here, they now know how to categorize things and not only just depending on their sensory. They are now they are now focusing on the things that they can do with it with the use of their imagination. The emergence of categorization in efforts toward building causal reasoning skills, characteristics of school age thinking. So in here, this is actually the introduction or their preparatory stage to the school age, because they are now categorizing things, and they now understand one by one the causes of some things. So growing personal perspective of reality to make sense of events and relationships. Like what I've mentioned a while ago, they are now looking at the causes of events. So they are now looking at the cause and effect of everything that they are now doing. So that's why they are not just solely focusing on the sensory. Next is difficulty in understanding the perspective of others. So in here now, this is where sibling rivalry is seen, because like what I've mentioned a while ago, they have this tendency of egocentrism, that they think that everything is about themselves. Now, since they do not understand this perspective of another sibling, they would now have a sibling rivalry. Egocentric with vivid imagination, everything is about them and they don't see the perspective of others. So like what I've said a while ago, because they are egocentric, so meaning they are focusing more of themselves. So that's why they have rivalries, some of them with their classmates, some of them with their siblings. So actually it started first with their sibling and then it splashes out to their classmates. So overwhelmed by big tasks, breaking big tasks into smaller, more manageable ones. So if like what I've mentioned a while ago in my previous presentation, is that they preschoolers tend to have overstimulation and they can become overwhelmed. So what is very important is that as a caregiver who handles preschooler, you actually give them the tasks one by one, so they will not get overwhelmed. The attention span, like what I've mentioned in my previous presentation, is if the preschooler is 3 years old, they only have 3 minutes attention span. Alright, to continue on the cognitive process of a preschooler, it corresponds to the pre-operational stage. So what is pre-operational stage? So pre-operational stage actually consists of the following. So I've already mentioned to you what egocentrism is all about. So egocentrism is an ability to take the other person's point of view because you're just focusing more on yourself. So that's what a preschooler is actually thinking all the time. So they think that they are the main actors of their stories. They believe that everything is all about them. So that is egocentrism. So that's one of the characteristics what Piaget is talking about in the pre-operational stage. The next one is magical thinking. So magical thinking is actually consists of confusing coincidence with causality Animism, which is attributing motivations to inanimate objects and events, and unrealistic beliefs about the power of wishes. So let's go to it one by one. So the first one is confusing coincidence with causality. So they believe, like what I've mentioned a while ago, is that they believe that all things that are happening around them is focused about them. So they think it's because it's a coincidence. Because it's happening, it's because of me. So that's coincidence. The next one is animism rather. So they put souls or characters or attitudes and behaviors towards an inanimate object. So that's either a Barbie doll or a toy car or whatever. So that's animism. And of course, lastly, is the unrealistic beliefs about the power of wishes. So they believe that one day a genie will come out from a bottle. A genie in a bottle. So that's how it works. So that's magical thinking. And then also, their thinking is actually dominated by perception. So in infancy, their thinking is actually dominated by sensory, but in here it's actually dominated with perception, meaning they were able to process things now with the use of their sensation. So Piaget once says that dominance of perceptions over logic. So comparison is not yet developed. Example, different shape of glasses with the same amount of water. So they think they can only perceive that there's water inside a bottle, but they were not able to identify the differences between the amount of water among different bottles. So that is thinking that is dominated by perception. The next one is socio-emotional development. So in here, we're now going to talk about the social and emotional development of the preschooler. So let's go to it one by one. So I'll be reading first the slide and I'll be going to discuss to you later. So first one, children experience an array of intense emotions but are not consistently able to regulate these experiences. So in here, that's why there are children who are actually experiencing tantrums, because in here, they were able to actually give the emotions just right away, but they weren't able to control it. So that's why self-regulation in preschoolers are actually asked, or something that is actually being taught. So development of the ability to implement basic but effective strategies for coping by the ends of the preschooler years to learn how to self-regulate. So again, like what I've mentioned a while ago, that's why preschoolers are being taught how to control their emotions and how to actually understand what are the things how are the things go, and they should not throw tantrums is because they are now being taught self-regulation. So one thing is that we should understand that preschoolers actually don't understand yet some of the cause and effect, though they know how now to process some of the cause and effect. However, they weren't able to process complex cause and effect. So we should understand that self-regulation itself is also difficult for them. They should be taught little by little and step by step. Development of increased individuation and independence with increased social reciprocity and awareness of self in relation to others. So in here, now the preschooler now learns that he or she is actually an individual who can actually do things on their own. And but however, they also learn how to be independent at the same time. So with this, like what I've mentioned in my previous presentation, that's why autonomy versus shame and doubt is being developed in here, and initiative versus guilt is also developed, because if the parents are actually permissive of what they do, they now form a initiative or autonomy. Children may be mistaken as inherently selfish, but they can be taught of good manners. Like what I've mentioned a while ago, the reason why they are being perceived as selfish is because they are egocentric. And that's actually normal for preschoolers. So if you're already an adult and if you're still an egocentric person, that's a problem already. So social circle gets bigger. So in here, the family, since they are now preschoolers, they are now starting to go to school, they are now starting to form friends. Now let's go to emotional development. So in the emotional development, a while ago we were able to discuss on the social aspect. Now let's go on the emotional development. So the challenge in emotional development is accepting limits while maintaining a self-direction, reining in aggressive and sexual impulses, and interacting with a widening circle of adults and peers. So in here, like what I've mentioned a while ago, in my previous presentation, is that they should now know their capacity and also their limit. But that's one of the challenges in here, in emotional aspect. And also, like what I've mentioned a while ago as well, preschoolers tend to throw tantrums. So aggressive impulses and other sexual impulses, that's according to Freud, should be now at least be controlled. Well, not that controlled, but should be, that's actually a challenge for them, and that should they surpass. And also interacting with other adults or other friends. Well, interacting with their co-classmates would be a bit easier. However, with adults, that would be challenging for them. Children learn what behaviors are acceptable and how much power they wield. So in here, they would now know some of the moral aspects of their behaviors. So what are the consequences that they will face if they do such actions? So I think I've already mentioned this in my previous presentation. Inability to control some aspect of the external world often results in a loss of internal control. That's called tantrums. So if they were able to get what they want, of course, it will blow up and they will throw tantrums. That's what I keep on saying a while ago. It's because they are egocentric, and whenever they don't get what they want, they think they would throw tantrums because of that. They normally experience complicated feelings towards their parents, intense love, jealousy, resentment, fear that anger may lead to abandonment. So in here, they have complicated feelings. So that's why in preschool age, the phallic stage is very important, because in here they would have jealous feelings towards their, for example, if that's a woman or if that's a girl, they would have intense feelings with their father. So she will develop an Electra complex. Same with the boy. The young boy develops a feeling with her mother, with his mother rather. So that boy would develop Oedipus complex. So that's what this is all about in this part, at the last part of this slide. So that's what I'm trying to talk about. So they are now having feelings of love and also jealousy at the same time, and also fear, because in Oedipus complex, even though the boy likes his mother, he also fears his father, because he loves his mother that much, and he believes that his father one day would take away his mother and castrate him. So that's actually called castration anxiety in theories of personality. Well, it will be discussed in your theories of personality, but that's how it actually looks like. The next one is communication. So in communication, these are some of the things that actually follows. So the first one is mimicking. So they mimic how the adults actually talk. So that's why some of the children actually talks like their mother, because they are actually mimicking them. They follow how they speak, what the words that they use, and actually do what they are actually doing. So actually that's the first part of their behavior, actually how it formed, because what they see is what they actually do, and how their parents communicate is actually how they will communicate. So they're actually fully conversational. So if you ask them what they want in the future or what is their dream job would be, so they would answer it as well. They're actually receptive with their language, so process spoken language and formation is also evident. It can be seen, and the vocabulary can increase up to 2,000. So, before in infancy, their words are actually limited, actually more on bubbling. But right now, they can now form 2-word sentences to 3-word phrases and sentences while incorporating grammatical rules. So in this stage, the preschoolers now learn somehow grammatical rules. So language, like what I've mentioned in infancy, the language actually plays a role in their development, especially if the knowledge of the infant. Same with the preschooler. So language is the barometer of both cognitive and emotional development. So in here, if there's a delay in language, it actually may contribute to problems of socialization, behavior, and learning. While the preschool language development lays the foundation for later success in school. Like what I've mentioned a while ago, if the child was able to develop the language in a very good manner, he or she would have a very good success in school, a tendency rather. Co-viewing with parents. So that's why you were able to see in our local news or our local televisions, patnubay at gabay na magulang ay kailangan. It's because co-viewing for the guardians or the parents are highly recommended. So caregivers should be present when children are using gadgets or watching television. Their imagination is actually wild. So what is real should not be explained that much. However, you as a caregiver can expound the simple imagination that they have. So some things are not meant to be released to them for now, but later in life maybe. Their play actually marked by increasing complexity and imagination. So the play is actually a good contradiction. A good what they call this, a good basis of how their imagination and cognition actually works. Because in here, everything will be shown and can be present. So because of that, their brain capacity can also be seen in here. So the scripts, their enactment, their roles, and many more can appear in here. So it can be a solo or parallel play for 1 to 2 years old, cooperative play for 3 to 4 years old, organized group play. So what are organized group plays? So organized group play are actually plays that become governed by rules. So like, in our country, we have habulan, patintero, langat, and lupa. So that's actually organized group play because it has rules and they need to follow that rules. Fairness is taken to mean equal treatment, regardless of circumstantial differences. So sense of limitation is not yet developed. So, for example, wearing capes, they think that they can fly so they can jump from heights. Need guidance to avoid accidents. So, like what I mentioned a while ago, before we go that. So, let's go first to the fairness. So, children believe, or the preschooler believes that fairness is actually having equal treatments among all of the children. So that's actually very common here in our country, that what a boy receives also should a girl receives. In other countries, they weren't able to get that same treatment. But here in our country, that is fairness, and that's how children view fairness as well. So one thing is that, like what I've mentioned a while ago, though they understand somehow the sense of cause and effect, they don't really understand so much about consequences. So that's why a sense of limitation should be developed, but that's actually a struggle in this age. Now let's go to moral development. So for the moral development, in here, a preschooler now understands the basic good and bad. So now they would now know if they're a good girl or a good boy. So in here, they would also understand motives of some people why they are good and why they are bad. So also, like what I've mentioned a while ago, they will have already at least an idea of what is fair and what is just, and what is bad and what is good, and many more. So also in moral development in preschooler, they are now having an idea of what are good manners and right conduct. But these are things that should be taught in school. So that's why before in my preschool years, and also in school age, we have this subject GMRC, good manners and right conduct. So we know how good and bad is, or what happens in good and bad. So further development of the concept of good and bad is very or highly recommended at this age. And also saying the words please, thank you, and sorry is also part of this stage. Alright, so what are the main points that a preschooler should learn? So first, we have here 3 R's actually. Regulation, reciprocity, and representation. Again, this regulation, reciprocity, and representation. For the regulation in here, the self-regulation is highlighted. So in here, how they would control their self. That's actually self-regulation. So how would they control their tantrums if they weren't able to get what they want? Next is reciprocity, because of their changing environment from home and they are now going to school. How will they interact with an adult? How will they interact with their classmates? So that is what reciprocity is all about. It's about social skills. And then representation is all about object permanence. I've already mentioned what object permanence is all about in infancy, but this is the wherein an object becomes permanently inside our mind, and what does it do? So, or what does it do, or what does it for, or what is it? So that's object permanence. So in here, their object permanence or their representation actually increases. So that's actually a main point and something that a preschooler should also learn. The 3 R's, which are the regulation, reciprocity, and representation, are actually the 3 main challenges of a preschooler. So now this is just a simple draft, or a simple table of the stages in this preschool. So again, in Piaget, we are under pre-operational, which is the thought period. So they are egocentric, they have magical thinking, and their thinking is dominated by perception. So they use symbolism, language, play, and personality. Again, that's pre-operational by Piaget in cognitive development. We also have psychosocial, that is in Erik Erikson. That's autonomy versus shame and doubt, and initiative versus guilt. So in here, if the parents are permissive, they were able to develop autonomy and initiative. And if their parents are not permissive, they are more restrictive, they are now going to develop shame and doubt and guilt. We also have the psychosexual by Freud, which I've already mentioned a while ago. That's anal, because their erogenous zone is on the anus, and that's on the toilet training. And we also have phallic, which is the erogenous zone is the genitals, the development of the Oedipus complex and Electra complex. And for the boys, they will now have, because of this complex or the Oedipus complex, they would have a tendency of a fear of castration, which is also known as the castration anxiety. And then with Kohlberg, which is in the moral development, he believes that is called the naive instrumental hedonism, which are the children account for individual points of view and judge actions based on how they serve the individual needs. So again, it's more on egocentric and what is morally right, how things are served to them. So reciprocity is possible at this point in moral development, but only if it serves one's own interest. Again, they are still egocentric at this point. So that's why it's called naive instrumental hedonism. For the motor, there are a wide range of motoric activities, both in gross and fine motor movements. Like in gross, we have throwing, catching, kicking balls, riding bikes, climbing, and etc. Again, in handedness, you will know the handedness of a child. at the age of 3 years old. And the language from telegraphic 2-word sentence to a 3-word phrase and sentences incorporating the grammatical rules. So again, it started first with 2 sentences and then it goes now further to 3-word phrases to a sentence itself. The language is again a critical barometer of both cognitive and emotional development. Alright, so that's it. So I hope you understand my lesson. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please let me know at the comment section below and I'll be happy to answer it. Thank you very much and I'll see you then. Bye for now.